our online listeners who are joining us. May we get a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call your name if you kindly unmute and just confirm your presence. Angelique Young.
Here.
Cameo Lanning.
Honey.
I think I heard affirmation there. Ms. Dorothy Yates. Ms. Dorothy Yates.
Dorothy Yates, present.
Thank you. Ms. Rita Jacobs. Ms. Rita Jacobs. Come back. Mr. Rodney Jackson.
I'm sorry. I'm here. I was trying to unmute. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Rodney Jackson.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Brenda Jacobs.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Tiffany Locklear.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Stacey Lynch. Amanda Fazard.
Present.
Thank you. Representative Godwin. Representative Jarrett Lowry.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Jeremiah Moore. Dr. LaRonda Lowry. Dr. Lowry. I see her present online. And Ms. Tina Lance. Madam Chair, you have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. Our first item on the agenda is approval of our agenda. May we have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
Rodney Jackson, I make a motion we adopt the agenda.
Second to adopt the agenda, Dorothy Yates.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. I trust that everyone's had the opportunity to review the December minutes. May we get a motion to approve the December minutes?
This is Rhea Jacobs. I make a motion to approve the December minutes.
Rodney Jackson, I second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. Thank you, guys. For the chairwoman's report, I do have a few items. First and foremost, I would like to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation to each and every one of you for your unwavering commitment and dedication to the Stacey Summit. The tremendous success of the event is a direct reflection of the meticulous planning, the diligent hard work, and your commitment put forth by the committee. Your contributions, the generous donations, your participation, your voices were instrumental in making the summit a huge success, and for that I cannot thank you enough. Please know that each and every one of you are truly appreciated. I'm also thrilled to share with you that our proposal to the United Tribes of North Carolina, the Unity Conference, was not only submitted, but it was also accepted. So we have the opportunity to present our report at such an important event. The report will be presented on Thursday, March the 9th from 2:45 to 4 in Salon A, with the distinguished Dr. Susan Silver serving as the session moderator. Ms. Angelique Young will be joining myself presenting the report, and I would like to extend an invitation to each and every one of you to join us that day. Your presence and support would mean a great deal to each of us. At this time, are there any questions for me? And this time we will move into our next agenda item. I'm pleased to welcome Representative Jerry Lowry to provide legislative updates. Representative Lowry is a highly respected member of the North Carolina General Assembly and the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina, and his commitment to improving education for American Indian students is truly admirable. Congratulations on this new appointment and welcome, Representative Lowry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate that. And I first want to say I do apologize that that you're not able to see my face. I just realized before the meeting started that I did not have WebEx, so I apologize. That's currently been downloaded. So I will make sure next time that there's a virtual meeting, you'll be able to see me. So to the committee, I apologize. I want to talk about just a few things this morning. As you may know, the General Assembly has actually been moving fast and steady the past few weeks. There's a lot of stuff going on. We definitely hope to be out of session by July, which I think it would be a very, very good thing. And for that to happen, we have to continue to move fast and make sure that we do everything the right way. And a couple of things that I have been working on. Number one, I've had some conversations with Dr. Locklear and Dr. Oxnine from the previous meeting that you had in reference to creating a position of a Director of Indian Education and DPI. I have spoke with DPI about it. They're in full support, and I've been working with some of the appropriations chairs, the education appropriation chairs in the House, to get that in the budget this year. And we hope the House, we're going to go first on our budget. We hope to have that done sometime before Easter. So, and so the Senate can start on theirs, and in June we can come to, compromise, have something passed, present to the governor. I'm really hoping to have that in this year's budget. So we're working extremely hard to make that happen. And I can say I've gotten some really good reception so far by one of those chairs. It is a priority of mine because it's a priority of yours. I hope to see in this year's budget. Also, another thing, I introduced last week a bill called it's HB 166, American Indians Graduating with Honors Act. It will allow American Indian students in North Carolina or graduating from Columbia High School to be able to wear a bird feather, rather than it be a hawk or eagle feather, to their high school graduation. I'm pleased to report that it did pass out of committee yesterday, and it will pass out of rules on Tuesday, and it'll be on the floor of the House Wednesday, where I do expect that the House will overwhelmingly vote to approve that bill to be able to go over to the Senate next week. So I'm actually really excited about that. As I stated, I believe that your priorities should be my priorities. In committee yesterday, I talked about how, in important focusing on American Indians, graduation rates, and also closing the gap is very, very important. One thing I've wanted to do since I've been here is help educate legislators that North Carolina is truly Indian country, and we have our own special, unique circumstances. And most of the time, we are, as I stated yesterday, had the lowest high school graduation rate of any other group in the state. And so we really need to take a focus because we already have really good people in the state that are working hard, but we need more resources and we need some focus from our leaders in the General Assembly. So I'm want to advise you that I will continue to work as hard as I can to be that voice for you. There's a lot of good things that I hope that we're able to do over these next 2 years. I look forward to attending all your meetings for this entire session, or for this year and for next year. And please feel free to always give me a call if you're ever in Raleigh. Stop by the building. Love to see anyone, talk with anyone. The one thing I've tried to do, especially if we ever have any American Indian youth come to the General Assembly, I do my best to give them a tour and take them on the floor. Because I think it's important for our youth to be able to see where they can and will be one day, if that's what they so choose. Madam Chair, I do appreciate you giving me this time. Once again, I do apologize for not being in front of you today or able to see my face. And I am open for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Representative Lowry. At this time, does anyone on the committee have any questions for Representative Lowry?
This is
Lowry?
Rhea. I have one question. He mentioned the bill being passed. Was that for American Indian honor graduates or was it for any graduates?
So the way the bill was written is that any American Indian student who is enrolled or eligible to be enrolled in any state or federally recognized tribe. So any American Indian student in North Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
This is Dorothy Yates. I was wondering, what is the progress on nominating for the American Indian position at DPI?
Is that in regards to the director of Indian education?
I'm not sure how it's titled,
Yes,
but
that's
it's
the same. That's the same position.
okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I have been working with some of the appropriations chairs to be able to get some funding to create a new position in DPI, and I'm hoping that it will be included in this year's budget.
Is there anything that we can do as American Indian citizens of North Carolina to help with reassuring the need or voicing our concern? Or is that part already taken care of and you're just now looking for appropriations?
Well, I will say that any help with the advocacy of letting your member of the if you don't live in District 47 where I'm at, any other member of the General Assembly, if you're letting them know how important it is that we get this position, I would definitely appreciate it. And also, I can send an email with some contact information with the three senior budget chairs that I've really been speaking with. It's really going to be their decision if it's in there or not. And I send the contact information, and it would be awesome if we could get some, maybe some phone calls made, some emails sent, because that does mean a lot when they can see this is something that the community wants as well. So I can send that contact information over to Madam Chair, emails and phone numbers.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
If there are not any other questions for Representative Lowry, thank you again. Congratulations again. We're grateful for your time, your insights, and your expertise, and we're honored to have the opportunity to hear from you today. Thank you for joining SACE.
And Chairman Locklear, I had my hand up because I
I'm
just
sorry. I apologize. I apologize. Please proceed.
Well, first, Representative Lowry, thank you for being on the elected into the North Carolina General Assembly and for doing all that you're doing. I have two kind of questions. On your House Bill 166, which I fully support, does that also include a Native American student's right to wear the Lumbee tribe cord at their high school graduation outside of the Lumbee tribe's cord recognition day?
So as the bill is written right now, objects of cultural significance is defined as bird feathers. I do know that the counties can still. So the short answer, no, ma'am. The bill was just affecting to be able to wear a hawk, eagle, turkey feather, at a graduation.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I will be contacting my connections within the General Assembly to have them support this as well. For the second thing, for the director of SACE, will you officially be the sponsor? And then, like you suggested, we will get an email that we can send out to our contacts within the General Assembly to support that as well for the hiring of that position?
Yes, ma'am. So with this particular position, I am working with the chair of the K-12 Appropriations Subcommittee and the three overall appropriations senior chairs to let this be a line item in the budget. So it wouldn't necessarily be a bill that I would introduce. It is a member priority for the budget. So I think the big thing is just, as we stated, getting the community or getting those four representatives to see how important it is to the community. Because I feel confident that we're going to make a good argument to be able to get it in the budget. I think for them to see that the community that really supports it will be that final push to be able to get it in the budget. But it won't be a standing bill. It's something that I'm trying to get wrapped into the budget language added to the budget that we're currently working on.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions at this time, thank you again, Representative Lowry, for joining Stacey today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing everybody in person next time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to note for the record that we had 3 additional members join, Mr. Calvin Locklear, and Mr. Calvin, if you just affirm verbally. We also had Ms. Tina Lance join. Ms. Tina, can you affirm?
Confirm, I'm present.
Thank you. And I believe we also had Ms. Stacey Lynch join. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Oxenine has not joined the meeting yet, so we're just going to proceed in our agenda to our next agenda item. Ms. Jennifer Bailey, the Section Chief of Summer Nutrition Programs. Welcome, Ms. Bailey.
Good morning, and thank you. I first want to start by thanking Dr. Silver for inviting us for the opportunity this morning to speak about our programs. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. I'll let my slides come up here. My name is Jennifer Bailey, and I'm Section Chief for Summer and Special Nutrition Programs in the Department of Public Instruction Office of School Nutrition. So you're seeing on the screen that it's outreach for summer 2024, and everybody's going, wait, we haven't had summer 2023 yet. So we're actually already gearing up for the next year. Our application season has closed for the summer of 2023, and we're actively moving through applications now and gearing up for summer operations, so we're very excited. But summer nutrition programs are federally assisted programs. We're federally funded, and NCDPI administers the summer nutrition programs. It is a reimbursement program, so we provide free healthy meals to children during the summer. Children 0 to 18 can participate in our programs. So it is a per meal reimbursement that that any of our sponsors receive for providing meals. So just wanted to provide a few highlights for North Carolina for the summer of 2022 for last summer. So we had 214 sponsors across the state with 3,425 sites. We served a little over 9 million meals when you combine breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack. On average, we served around 20 days. So on the right side of the screen, you will see that we only accessed about 10% of the need that we have in our state, or actually the funding that's available to us for summer meals programs. So to compare that to during COVID, we actually served around 21 million meals during the summer during COVID. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we had a really great phenomenon that happened during COVID where we had nutrition hubs. And we had a lot of groups that came together. So not only were we providing meals, we were providing a lot of other community support as well. So that's one thing, one of the reasons that we're doing outreach for summer programs. We're trying to connect some of those programs back in now that COVID is over, some of the other programs of need that we still have. So a lot of funding here to be accessed and a lot of students that need it. We know that the need is there since we fed 21 million meals during COVID and 9 million meals last year. So next slide, please. Just a quick overview of how everything works. So Congress provides the legislation and the funding. USDA writes all the rules and regulations that we have to follow. The state agency oversees the program. We monitor the sponsors. We go through all of the application procedures, things like that, continuing education. And the sponsors administer the program at the local level. So they have sites that are underneath them where the meals are actually served. On the next slide, who can be a sponsor? So public or private nonprofit school food authorities. So all of our schools can be sponsors in the summer. Units of local, municipal, county, tribal, or state government. Public or private nonprofit camps. Public or private colleges or universities, and private nonprofit organizations. So we've done a lot of outreach recently. We're working with hospitals. We're working with libraries. We're working with schools. We're working with all kinds of different groups to try to find places to provide meals for students in the summer. On the next slide, you'll see the sponsor responsibilities. So they have to attend continuing education workshops. We offer several workshops throughout the year that provide them with the information they need to be successful. They locate and recruit eligible sites where they can serve meals. They're responsible for monitoring, evaluating, and sustaining the sites. They hire and train their supervisors and staff and volunteers. They have to procure their food in a competitive manner. So that's a really important piece of the program for the integrity of the federal dollars. They maintain program documentation for 3 years plus the current year, and they prepare and file their claims for reimbursement. So on the next slide, what is a meal site? So it can be any physical location that we approve as a state agency. So it can be a park, it can be a playground, it can be any school site, it can be a camp, it can be pretty much anywhere that you could feed a child a meal. If we can approve it and show that it's safe and an appropriate environment for children, meals can be served there. And you can operate every single day of the week in the summer, so all 7 days meals can be provided, so even on the weekends. On the next slide, sites are responsible for attending sponsors training, so the sponsor provides training to the sites. We provide training to the sponsors provide training to the sites. They serve the meals and supervise the children. They keep daily meal count records, communicate with the sponsor. They provide activities, and they meet all the regulations. So sites can prepare food if they have the capability to do that, but they don't have to. They can also have a vendor bring that food in. So we'll talk about the different types of sites. You can have an open site, which means that all children in the area can receive those meals for free. So children 0 to 18, they can have up to 2 meals or snacks per day. And this is based on areas of economic need. So school data or census data are used to determine those eligible areas where open sites can be held. So basically, if the area is more than 50% free or reduced students, you can have an open eligible site there. And then we have open restricted sites, which limits the number of children. It's still an open site, so anyone can eat for free, but it limits it to the numbers of children, maybe for a security reason or safety or some other reason that they need to control that site. And then we have, I believe, closed enrolled sites, so they can serve 2 meals or snacks a day. The students are actually enrolled in a program at a closed enrolled site. So if they have, a special education program during the summer and they're enrolled in it, we can have a closed enrolled site. So they can be in eligible areas or non-eligible areas. Household applications or a list of income eligible participants, census data, or school data can be used to determine eligibility at these types of sites. The next type of site is campsites. So if you have overnight camps, 3 meals a day can be provided to these students, and you only actually get reimbursed for the eligible children for those types of sites. Okay, you can serve up to 2 meals per day at most of our types of sites in the summer food service program. So you can do 1 meal only, or you can do combinations of meals. So breakfast and snack, supper and snack. Really the only thing that you can't do is a lunch and a supper. But you can do all other combinations of meals. If you want to add an additional meal, you could work with the CACFP program to do that in conjunction with the SFSP program. So you can get creative and offer 3 meals a day. Next slide, just a brief overview of the meal pattern that must be served for breakfast. So 1 serving of milk, a serving of vegetable or fruit at breakfast, 1 grain, and 1 meat. On the next slide is the snack meal pattern. So you have to have at least 2 different food components. You can't serve juice and milk together, but you can serve pretty much any other combinations that you would want to for snack. And then for the lunch meal pattern, 1 serving of milk, 2 servings of vegetables or fruits, 1 serving of grain, and 1 serving of meat. So they have pretty good options for the summer. They also have the option of using the National School Lunch Meal Pattern instead of the SFSP meal pattern, which provides a little bit more volume and variety. All right, the next slide. So a few barriers to participation. One is just the limited number of programs out there for low-income children during the summer. We're always striving to increase those programs and to find places where we can serve meals. So that can be a barrier. Transportation is a barrier, especially in our rural areas. We have trouble getting kids to meal sites, so we're working on ways to get sites to kids. So we worked on some pilot programs during the pandemic that we're hoping that we can expand a little bit, but there are some things in the law that prevent us from doing some of these things, but we're working on that piece. Volunteers, not having enough people to operate, and then I think there were a couple other things on that slide, I apologize. Just site limitations, and then awareness of the programs, which is why we're here to speak today. All right, and the next slide. So best practices, like I've already said, invest in outreach. We have a lot of groups that do yard signs and flyers, and billboards, and different things, doing the outreach to let people know about their programs, using the creative partnerships that we've spoken about with the nutrition hubs and things like that, providing transportation, utilizing volunteers, having wonderful activities, making the parents feel welcome. Sometimes the parents can stay. They're more likely to allow their children to participate, and then choosing strategic locations across the state. Next slide, please. And this is our small but mighty team. There's, I say 3.5 of us because one of us is part-time. So we're working really, really hard to administer these school nutrition programs. Next steps, if you're interested or if you know somebody who might be interested, would be to reach out to one of us. We're already starting the outreach for the 2024 year, and we're happy to work with anyone who would love to work with us. So thank you for your time and attention. And I'll entertain any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Bailey? Again, thank you for joining us to provide those updates.
Thank you.
We'll just proceed with our agenda. Next on our agenda, we have our very own Mr. Rodney Jackson providing Title VI updates. Mr. Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. I appreciate it. The Title VI grant opened up on February the 6th, 2023, and it will be closing on March the 10th, which is next Friday, 2023, at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Once it closes, you cannot log in. Applicants will be submitting their number for eligible Indian students, their account period from their account period, and the total number of students enrolled in their school district at this time. The following entities are eligible for this program: LEA, including charter schools authorized by the LEA under the state law, and Bureau of Indian Education schools, Indian tribes, and I think that's where the Coharie tribe for Sampson County falls under, Indian organizations, Indian community-based organizations. Enrollment requirements for the Title VI grant: you must have a minimum of 10 eligible students during your account period in your LEA program. A minimum requirements are not required for Alaska, California, and Oklahoma states. For Indian tribe and Indian organizations only, more than half of the total number of Indian students counts must be applicants for their tribes. Once you certify Part 1, you cannot increase your numbers. Part 2 will open up on April the 3rd, 2023, and will close on May 12th, 2023 at 11:59 Eastern Time. All Title VI funds from 2022 must be used by June 30th, 2023. And the Office of Indian Education, OIE, Title VI, has a new email address, and it is oie.easy@ed.gov. Let me say this about the program. My office will be meeting with Chapel Hill Carrboro Schools in the next couple of weeks to help them get their program started. They had tried to get it started this year. Unfortunately, they couldn't come up with 10 students. So we're going to work. We're meeting with them in the next couple of weeks to get them started. We're meeting with Wake County next week to help them with some things that they got going on. And my office is also meeting with Hope County and Harnett County to get their programs up and going also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, and thank you for working with those other counties to get those programs started. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jackson?
This is Amanda for start. I just wanted to say thanks to Rodney. I appreciate him taking the time, and it was sad that we only got 6 kids registered in the Chapel Hill Carrboro schools, but they have faith that we have at least 10, and I believe we do too. So thank you for all your support, Rodney.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. All right, so let me see if we can continue in our agenda. Mr. Clifton is not here, correct? Miss Dorothy, would you like to go ahead and give your updates on the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs and the Unity Conference?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our director, Greg Richardson, regrets that he couldn't be here today to give the update, but this is a very busy time for the commission. We have our Unity Conference coming up next week, and plus our commission meeting on March the 9th. So he and our deputy director are busy preparing for those events. Just to give a brief update on some of the activities that, as executive director of the commission, that Mr. Greg Richardson has been involved in. He did receive the Secretary's Award from the Department of Administration for public service. And we know that he is very much so deserving of that for the work that he does for the commission. And we know that Secretary Cashwell is very aware of the activities of the commission and did recognize the work of the executive director. So he received the Secretary's Award for Public Service on January 20th of this year. On the COVID-19 pandemic program update, the commission received funding from the General Assembly to hire a staff member to conduct a study regarding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in Indian communities in North Carolina. So Kirsten Page Freeman has been employed to do this work. She is working closely with Dr. Ronnie Bell at Wake Forest University, Deborah Farrington at the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the Indian Health Services, and Dr. Tracy Locklear with the U.S. Census data. So we're thankful for that funding so that we can have an adequate recollection of the impact of the COVID-19 in our Indian communities in North Carolina. Mr. Richardson is also setting up tribal community and consultation meetings where Secretary Cashwell would like to visit each of our tribes and organizations in the coming months. So they're busy scheduling that. The commission is working with the secretary's team to develop a survey as part of the commission's strategic planning process. And this strategic survey will be to address concerns regarding commission committees, the committee structure, and the work of the commission. We have some expiring terms of some of our commission members and our Indian Housing Authority members, as well as our SACE members, that we are busy filling the positions for those, and that information will be forthcoming. There is an interagency digital equity proposal that's entitled Indian Digital Equity Program that the commission had worked on to help with digital technology disparities and increasing literacy. And that proposal was presented, but it was not funded. So we regret that, because we know that is a need in our American Indian communities for digital technology disparities. The Unity Conference we're very excited about. I look forward every year to SACE participating and informing our tribal leaders and tribal members that attend our session on the work that we are doing here in SACE. The Unity Conference also recognizes veteran awards from each Indian community. That's been a very vital part of the Unity Conference. There is an internship program that the commission is working with the North Carolina General Assembly that's entitled Indian Law in North Carolina. So anybody interested with that needs to contact the commission for that summer internship program for more information. The commission did receive COVID-19 test kits, and some of those will be distributed to our tribes and Indian associations, the urban associations, at the Unity Conference. We did receive a tobacco prevention and control branch grant that we will be working with partners at the Tobacco Control Branch of North Carolina Department of Human Health Services, Wake Forest University School of Medicine, and the North Carolina Indian Health Board on this grant. The funding cycle is from January the 23rd through July the 24th, with an allocation of $160,000. This data will showcase tobacco use exposure and its effects on the health of American Indians. So that will be very vital to our American Indian communities. Healthy Blue, from a part of the Blue Cross Foundation, did help to fund our Indian Child Welfare Gathering that was held on the campus of Campbell University on February the 23rd. It was well attended. The sessions were very informative, and we need to make sure that we let our American Indian communities know that we need American Indian foster parents. With the American Indian Child Welfare Gathering, there is a preference given if our Indian children have to be taken from their home, that they can be placed in the home of an American Indian, hopefully somebody within their tribe. So for this to take place, we as community members need to participate and make sure that we have foster parent training for these needs of our Indian child welfare participants. The Hunt Institute will be giving a report at our commission meeting next Thursday, to support the birth and of children who are eligible for the Indian Child Welfare and birth to early childhood issues for our American Indian youth. It has completed a research initiative relating to education, parents' needs, child care, and that will be discussed at our commission meeting on Thursday. So we thank the Hunt Institute for their research and bringing this information back to us. The Lumbee tribe did receive a direct grant from the North Carolina General Assembly during the last session, and the purpose is to fund the opportunity for the Lumbee tribe to develop a tribal department of agriculture. So that will flow through the budget for this year. Our next commission meeting will be held June the 2nd, and then we have another one September the 1st, and another one December the 1st. So each of the first months of the quarters will be our North Carolina Commission meetings. Also, on this past Monday, our executive director, Mr. Greg Richardson, did travel to Appalachian for a cultural diversity program. There is a Lumbee club on the Appalachian campus, and they had been advocating to have a Lumbee flag to fly in the International Hall located there on the campus. So with their, the committee or from the Lumbee Club, student club, that cultural diversity funded their request to have that flag. The Eastern Band of Cherokee flag is also flown there. So we have 2 out of the 8 recognized tribes in North Carolina who have flags flying there. And it is our hope that we can have our other tribes who have students attending at Appalachian to advocate to get their tribal flags flown there in the International Hall also. And one comment made by one of the students from the club was that when we see our flag flying, we know they see us. And we know identity is so important to our American Indian students. We do have a new director for the Commission's Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act. This is the program that our deputy director held the position of, Candace Lowry, before she took the position of deputy director. So Ms. Maria Richardson from the Hallawasaponi tribe has accepted the position as the new director. This is a very viable program for our American Indian students and other people seeking jobs. So that is a very plus that we have a director working with that program. We now have a director working with the Indian Child Welfare Program, but this program, sadly to say, it does not currently have a funding source. So we're looking at some ways that we can get some funding and have some training so that we can provide the needed foster homes for our children that are having to be placed outside of their homes or other traumas that may be coming. But the Indian Child Welfare gathering was well attended and really addressed and called to our attention the needs of some of our children. Our tribal recognition program through the commission is meeting next Wednesday, and we're taking a look to make sure that our bylaws for this committee is updated and meets the requirements that are given in the legislation for this committee. And then we have, as you know, our American Indian Cultural Heritage Committee, and they are working through our cultural resources through their department at the state level. And I will send you their email address and their website address. They are very good at posting any of our American Indian activities that take place within the state of North Carolina. And I will also email to you this director's report so that you can go back and review some of the highlights that I have brought to you today. Look forward to seeing you at the Unity Conference, and especially in our session. The conference theme is Many Tribes, One People. So we've got good workshops that will be presented, as well as general sessions. And we always look forward to our SACE presentation during this conference. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Yates. Are there any questions for Ms. Yates at this time? Thank you, Ms. Yates. Thank you for all you do for our students in Indian country. Awesome job, and congratulations to Mr. Greg Richardson on his service award. Please send our congratulations to him. Dr. Oxenine has joined us via telephone. So we are going to move back up into our agenda for our State Board of Education updates. Dr. Oxenine, thank you for joining us to provide updates on behalf of the State Board of Education.
All right, so much, Chair Lady. It's a pleasure to be with the commission. With the council today. I'm sorry that I can't do this via team. I'm having a terrible problem with Spectrum, and has been going on for about 3 days. So I'm joining by way of phone, and I just hope it will hang in with me through the presentation. And Congratulations. I heard a little bit going in and out because of my connectivity. I think it was Mr. Richardson who won some distinguished award. So I want to convey my congratulations to him. And any others, I heard maybe from some other names who might have won some awards. But regardless, I just want to extend congratulations to each person, because that commitment takes time and takes devotion and a keen sense of service to Indian people. So kudos to all the award winners. I'm going to highlight, it would take probably 3 hours to go through a thorough highlight of the topics that came before the State Board the last couple of days. We met on Wednesday for our committee discussions, and then yesterday was the official meeting of the State Board. So I've decided to hit maybe three or four areas of the agenda that I think may be of interest to you. Pause me at any time if you have questions or if you need a bit of clarification. And depending on how much additional information you need, what I would do is ask Dr. Silver to go to the State Board agenda and find the particular item and share that with you. But the first thing that I want to present to you is that came out of called the BSOP, the Business and School Operations Committee of the State Board. And I'm particularly interested and pleased to hear about this. It's an opportunity, actually. So if you know of anyone in your community who has a background in accounting, let's say they are a licensed CPA, they hold a degree in accounting, they have a business background, this is an opportunity for American Indians to move in this direction in terms of professional avenue. The provision is part of General Statute 115C 435, and it establishes the position of a school finance officer. We're in dire need in North Carolina, across the state, of school finance officers. The school finance officers have, I suppose there's a crescendo now reaching in North Carolina where many of them are retiring. Or if they're mid-career, let's say, and there are other opportunities to earn more money in the private sector, they may be leaving public education, going into the private sector because they do have very strong, durable degrees if they're in the area of business and finance. So, but let me underscore the point again. We are running low on school finance officers in North Carolina. I know in my region, the Sandhills, Robinson County definitely has the need. Scotland County went through probably several weeks, if not months, trying to find a qualified school finance officer. So the State Board of Education we have the authority over school finance officers. So we play a significant role in screening those individuals and not necessarily hiring them, but we play a major role in working alongside the school superintendent, making sure that a highly qualified person fills that seat, because 90% of the constitutional role of the State Board of Education falls in the area of fiduciary responsibilities. That means we have to protect the citizens, the taxpayers, and the students. So we have a fiduciary responsibility in the area of school finance. So 1985 session of the General Assembly required that the State Board of Education adopt standards, and part of that means job description for this position. The SBE is the policy related to those standards. So I've taken some notes on this from my meeting with the State Board this past week. So let me see if I'll read you the general job description. An LEA finance officer is responsible for all fiscal affairs of the school system, including the state, federal, and local funds, the enterprise funds, and capital operations. The finance officer shall install and maintain an integrated system to plan fiscal operations to ensure sound decisions, accountability, and transparency. This legislatively required position per GS 115C 435 must be able to interpret and follow fiscal regulations prescribed by the North Carolina General Statutes, the State Board of Education, federal agencies, meaning the Department of Education in Washington, the local government, that means our county commission boards, because the superintendent on an annual basis is required in law to go before the county commission to request supplemental funds for not necessarily salaries, but for capital improvements in a local district. So this finance officer, is also accountable to your local county government and other funding entities. This position is the financial leader of the school district, and it's required to have a comprehensive accounting knowledge, including the ability to interpret and implement new accounting standards per general statute. This position is a critical component of the leadership team of a school district. Then I'm going to just see if I can find my notes on the qualifications. Okay, so Section 2 of the general statute lays out the qualifications, and this is the part that probably will be of interest to you. Recommend this section applies to these new qualifications. Actually, back up and say. So these qualifications that I'm about to read to you have been revised by GPI over the last, I would say, maybe the revisions have been going on for several months. They were brought to the State Board of Education Wednesday, and yesterday we acted on this set of qualifications. So these qualifications will go into effect in July 1, this coming July 1. Years of experience change from 3 years to 5 years. So 5 years in an area with experience related to financial operations, not just a business-related field. Like, let's say someone with a business degree in the area of marketing, sales and marketing, would not qualify under these new qualifications that will go into effect in July. So the ideal person with a business degree is someone who is in the numbers field, such as accounting. Okay, is deemed to be knowledgeable in the area of accounting is paramount to the success of this position. So the State Board of Education is now recommending a minimum of 15 hours of accounting coursework at the college level, rather than what was in policy and law was 9 hours. So that's bumped up to 6 hours at the college level of accounting. Now, anyone with a degree in accounting would be definitely on the playing field if they had an interest in this position. We're not allowing an MBA. One would say, oh my goodness, an MBA, that is the top of the ladder in terms of a business degree, but an MBA has just a range of specialty areas that may not have anything to do with accounting. So just because the individual has an MBA does not mean that the person is qualified to be a school finance officer, because accounting is hugely a part of the role. A person who would be interested in this position is a licensed certified public accountant, absolutely high on the qualifying list for the position. We are allowing, meaning the State Board of Education, we are allowing anyone certified prior to 2023 to maintain that certification. Let's say that we've got finance directors already employed in school systems, and this is applicable to a huge number of finance officers currently seated in that position. So if they don't meet these new requirements, they will be grandfathered. That means that they're not required to go back to school to satisfy these new requirements. They will be grandfathered and protected in their jobs. So a summary of the recommendations, these new revisions, I should say. Let me see if I have my notes. Strengthens requirements to reflect what has been proven to allow employees to be successful in this critical position. Strengthens the pay grade. Let's see if I can find the pay grade. Seems like the pay grade is, I don't have that piece of information jotted down. That's important. But I think it's here, this might be related. A minimum pay, here we go, I found it. Minimum pay begins at $80,000. So that's minimum pay in that position. And I'm sure it will climb depending on the experience and the credentials of the individual. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you regarding that opportunity for Native Americans. If you know of American Indians in your community that fit the job description that I've just laid out, please make them aware, and they can direct their questions. I suppose, Dr. Silver, would you be willing to field any of the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
That would be good. Are there any questions about this position, the school finance officer? Okay, if there are no questions in that category, I want to talk with you briefly about, this is a recommendation that was presented last month, and it came out of the committee I chair, Educator Standards and Practice subcommittee or committee of the state board. The Department of Community Colleges last year developed what is called a standardized framework that will allow individual campuses across North Carolina community colleges to apply to, first of all, they would have to complete a proposal and then present that proposal to their, to the Department of Community Colleges. The Department of Community Colleges has a state board of education, just like K-12 has a governance body called the State Board of Education. So let's say a community college decides it wants to offer a degree, a teaching degree, and right now that doesn't happen. Community colleges awards an associate degree in, let's say, some area of education, but the candidate has to go on to a 4-year institution to complete the requirements for that degree. So back last spring, the Department of Community Colleges created a framework that will now allow an individual campus to seek permission to operate as an educator preparation program. The letters are EPP, Educator Preparation Program. So once that proposal is approved at the community college governance level, then it comes over to the State Board of Education. The proposal comes to us for our consideration and approval. So in February, 2 community colleges went through all the steps at the community college level, received permission to operate as an EPP under the condition that the State Board of Education would do the authorization. So yesterday, the State Board of Education, I'm very, very proud of what took place yesterday with regard to this item. We approved 2 community colleges to now offer an elementary education program at the community college level toward earning a residency license. And those 2 community colleges are Blue Ridge Community College and Wayne County Community College. So what does that mean? That means individuals can go right at home, in many cases in their backyards, to a community college, user-friendly institutions, very much tied to the community, and can earn. Right now, the provision only allows for elementary education and the residency license. But this is going to be such a boost to increasing the teacher pipeline in North Carolina. I mean, I had to contain myself because I was so excited over this opportunity at the community college level. So these 2 community colleges will be up and running and offering programs that will lead toward a residency license beginning. I would suspect that they're probably going to launch their programs next fall in August of 23. I do predict that now that the way has been paved through this framework that the Department of Community Colleges approved, and we approved several months ago, and then yesterday approved the launch of the first 2 community colleges that are going to move in this direction. I think this is just the beginning. I can see perhaps this time next year, who knows the number of community colleges that will likely be moving in the same direction. Does anybody have any questions about that? I think we do. Don't we have? We have a member on Stacy from a community college. Ms. Lowry, Dr. Lowry. I don't mean to put her on the spot, but she's probably aware of this opportunity. Can everybody hear me out there?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Arsenault. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. So a little bit of information that doesn't keep me, I mean, I'm not as elated over this as I am over the opportunity for our community colleges to offer degrees and license. The enrollment in our schools of education across the state is declining. We're required to get a report each year, around sometime between June and July, the NCDPI receives a report from each of our schools of education, private and public. It's called IHE, Institutions of Higher Education Performance Report. So this performance report contains, I would say, maybe 11 data points. One of those data points requires the EPP or the IHE. Those two sets of letters are interchangeable. We require numbers in terms of how many students have you admitted in your program over from one reporting cycle to the next reporting cycle. Now, there was a glitch in the report that came to the state board, a major glitch that came to the state board in February. 4 of the institutions, for some reason, DPI had not accurately captured all of the numbers, all of their admissions numbers. And I won't even begin to go into technicalities that caused this glitch. Too complicated. The thing that I want to share with you is the glitch was worked out, was resolved at DPI, on the DPI end. The institutions that were affected by the glitch are now pleased because their numbers look much, much, much better. In fact, one of the schools was my school, UNCP, was showing they gained tremendously by the correction, the removal of the glitch. So, but it doesn't matter. The original report that contained the glitch showed that the enrollment, the admissions in our EPPs, teacher education programs, the enrollment was down 42%. That's alarming, okay? So corrections were made, updates in the data. We're still, across North Carolina, enrollment is still down. Not as dramatic as 30, I think it might have been 39-point-something% decline. It's now about 24-25% decline after the correction in the data. That's still alarming. Because why is it alarming? It's because we are now seeing it isn't just one snapshot year of a decline. What we're now sensing is a trend over. A trend is beginning to emerge in decline. Also, it was reported yesterday, not an official report, but it was just information that the superintendent shared during the meeting, is that enrollments are also declining in our community colleges. So when we think of our post-secondary education, which consists of our 2 years plus our 4 years, there's an overall decline in enrollment. I don't know what to read from that. Is it a change in the generation of college goers or potential college goers? Are they looking at post-secondary education differently? Or do they see it as not as attractive? Is it too much of a stretch for them? Do they see no career job potential after giving, let's say, 6 years, maybe more than that, in post-secondary education? The key is, what does this mean? The key question that Stacey would be interested in knowing an answer to is, how are American Indians, where do they fall in this decline, in this trend that we're beginning to see? We could probably gather that information by doing a little bit of a data dive in the information that was sent to DPI on this IHE performance report. I'm sure that's possible, that DPI could go into the numbers and disaggregate. I think I don't want to overpromise on this, but it's something that we could explore to see where the American Indian students fit. Hopefully we won't see this trend in the disaggregated data for American Indians. Maybe the American Indian enrollment trend is as far as maintaining good numbers. Maybe it's a trend that's holding, but we probably need to explore that a bit further. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And I believe that's all that I have to share today, Chair Lady.
Thank you, Dr. Ottenstein. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Ottenstein at this time?
Oh, I did want to share some good news. I received yesterday at the end of the meeting from Superintendent Truitt. She informed me that she has named an American Indian student to her Student Advisory Council. And the student's name is Chloe Hammond. She is from Lumberton Senior High School. So I don't know if anyone out there knows Chloe or knows her family. She's unfamiliar to me. But it is good news that the superintendent has moved forward with naming someone to her advisory council. Have we talked at all about the position, Chair Lady Locklear? Have we talked about the American Indian Educator position at DPI? Has that come up yet?
Thank you for updating us, and congratulations to Ms. Hammond. Indeed, I was going to ask the committee while you were here. I know you informed us that your connection was unstable. If we could go ahead and discuss that one pager, maybe 5-10 minutes to discuss that one pager while you were here. Representative Lowry did join us earlier today and provided a legislative update. But we do have an agenda item to discuss that one pager with the committee. That one pager was sent out to our safety committee members, and so we can open the floor and discuss that at this time, Dr. Ottenstein.
All right, that sounds great. I think I'm going in and out, but I'm good. I'll hang in here.
Okay.
I mean, do you want me? Who's discussing it?
You can go ahead and provide your updates if you would like to, and then we can follow up.
Well, I'm complete. I finished with my update.
No, I'm saying from the one from this position standpoint.
Oh. Okay.
I know you've.
I can't pull it on my computer. So I don't have anything to read from.
Okay.
Let me see do you have it in front of you?
Yes, we have it pulled up here. We're sharing it here in the meeting.
Okay, it's a very good one pager. The main thing that I believe, and I know that it's in that one pager. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm doing this discussion from memory. But what is very important in that one pager is that we highlight, and I guess it came from our summit meeting, listening to or talking with Superintendent Truitt during lunch. She was kind of emphasizing, she wasn't emphatic, but she would keep saying it needs to be targeted, the position needs to have a defined role, the position, whoever serves in the position really is going to have to be have to produce the General Assembly, should they, and I hope they do, I hope that Jared Lowry is successful in getting something into a bill so that we can get the funding. The General Assembly is going to be very interested in seeing results, and we are too. I mean, she's not saying anything to me that I don't believe, and you can concur. So we wanted to really target in that one pager the achievement gap. So narrowing, eliminating, mitigating, hopefully ending the gap is going to be very critical to this position. We haven't gone so far as to lay out a job description. That can come later. The main thing is getting a bill into the General Assembly in a committee. A lot of politicking will have to be done coming from Jared Lowry and other members, mainly of the Robeson County delegation. One would be Danny Britt and Brendan Jones. Even Brendan Jones is part of the delegation. He doesn't have a huge slice of the pie when it comes to voters in Robinson, but he still represents the corner of Robeson County. The two main members of the legislative delegation to help usher this through the General Assembly would be Jared and would be Danny Britt. But the main thing that I will say to you is, in your talking points and any conversations that you have in your community, and please keep pumping it up and talking about the need for the position. Same applies with the commission. It's going to just require all hands on deck around this. All hands on deck. And it is targeting the achievement gap. That means that individual. How do you reduce and mitigate an achievement gap? Well, someone at the state level, at the DPI level, would need to know what is necessary at the school level to begin doing that. That individual will be working very closely with the variety of teams that we have inside the agency, and Dr. Silver is the knowledgeable person about all the various teams that go into the low-performing school districts and what they do, what she does, what her staff does, what other teams, and that regional support team network, all that they do to work with principals and teachers. This person, the American Indian Coordinator of Academic or Educational Services, would need to be very integrated in that work with these teams. Very integrated, very much hands-on, very knowledgeable of what's going on or what isn't going on in the curriculum, in the classroom instruction-wise. Even taking a look at other aspects of the school in terms of our American Indians, what is their attendance rate? Are they chronically absent from school? The individual would have to be able to work closely with school social workers. If American Indian students are not coming to school on a regular basis, how to work with American Indian parents, how to conduct a home visit, how to engage the family such that the family begins to get on top of this and control absenteeism. So I lay all that, and all of those factors, those different elements that I'm describing to you are the key elements that will end this, not necessarily end, that's probably too pie in the sky, but it will begin to close the gap that we constantly see from year to year in our report, the safety reports, as well as the reports that come out of Tammy Howard's shop, the accountability reports, September. So that's where we are. I think that Secretary Caswell did take a look. She had indicated at the summit that she would be willing to peruse the one page, and I believe she did. She had some suggestions, and I'm sure that we incorporated the suggestions in that one page. But I can't emphasize enough. Otherwise, we could get that person employed at DPI, but without some direction, without some focus, I don't know that the person would feel like he or she's accomplishing anything. Maybe the Superintendent Truitt might feel the same way. I don't know. So this targeting of specific area in the job description is critical. So that's what I would leave everyone with. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Dr. Otson. And so Representative Lowry provided an update earlier. So it will not go through as a bill, but he has included it as a budget item. He is also sending us an email so that we can send out some emails ourselves, and then we can also include this one pager as we send out those emails. Does any committee members have any questions for either Dr. Otson or myself?
I do have one bit of information, kind of what's happening in a school district piece of information that will be of interest to Stacey, I believe.
Yes, please proceed.
There is I'm not going to go into deep detail because I really don't know deep detail around this issue. but their parents in one of our counties, Robeson County, they have some concerns around regarding a curriculum that is, I think it's in K-5. I don't know that it extends beyond the 5th grade, but parents are concerned about some of the themes that are being presented to young children that move in that conflict with Christian values and beliefs of not just Indian people in the county, but Robeson County is part of a deep Bible Belt regardless of race. And many of you live in those similar settings. So this curriculum is of major concern to the parents. They are trying to work very closely with the superintendent to either eliminate the curriculum or revise components of the curriculum to ensure that the needs of elementary education children are being appropriately addressed through a curriculum that is more about educating them in the fundamentals of being a well-educated person, such as reading and writing, math and science and social studies, and what is considered the standard curriculum through the standard course of study that the State Board of Education supports. So just to make you aware of that, not to get you alarmed, but it's a piece of information that I just wanted to make you aware of that, what's happening. Now, on a larger scale, is that it shows the importance of parents in the education of children, regardless of the issue, regardless of the controversy. The role and the voice of parents and families cannot be minimized and diminished. You know that the General Assembly has a bill in place that is elevating the parental right, the rights of parents, and that probably is going to succeed in passage and ratification. You know that the state superintendent has her own parent advisory committee, and this is an opportunity for parents, and it's not just necessarily one side of the aisle. It's not all Republican. It's not all Democrat. It's sure, you know, it represents all political persuasions on the left, the right, and somewhere in the middle, because that's the way it should be in America. And so she has a committee that she meets with on a regular basis, and she's hearing the concerns and wishes of parents at, at her level. There is a bill in the hopper that is for the rights of parents in our North Carolina General Assembly, and probably in other counties across North Carolina in school districts that parents are exercising their voice in the education of their children. We spend $10 a year, $10 billion a year in K-12 education. That doesn't have anything to do with higher ed. Higher ed has its own budget. So $10 billion, taxpayer dollars, low-performing school districts. Some of them are chronically low-performing, meaning they have a history of low performance. The focus, in my opinion, as one citizen taxpayer, we need to be focused on reading, math, writing, math, science, social studies, and the core curricula. So just to make you aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Artsman. So we will send out an email when we get the email from our representative with those emails of our other representatives. You guys can download this one pager and attach it to your emails to send out. And we thank you guys for your support and your advocacy. Thank you, Dr. Artsman, for joining us today. Thank you for your support and your advocacy for American Indian students.
My pleasure. Next time, I hope this is better. I'm just sitting here. I've moved about 3 times in my house for better connectivity.
Thank you.
All right, and keep me posted. I might reach out to Jared myself later next week.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we are going to proceed in our agenda. After our next agenda item, we will break. I do want to be respectful of Mr. Clifton's time, so we're going to go ahead and proceed in the agenda, and afterward we will break. Welcome, Mr. Clifton. Thank you for joining us today to provide updates from the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Just a quick sound check. Can someone please let me know if you can hear me clearly, please?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Kaylin Clifton. I am a research analyst at the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. I was invited here today to speak a little bit on the topics of not only learning loss, as you can see on the agenda, but also recovery. So I'm going to share a few slides due to another commitment I've got that's coming up soon on the clock. I'm going to kind of call an audible with the slides I'll be sharing, but I'm going to make sure to hit the high points, and if there are any detailed questions, I will be prepared and fully glad to answer those questions as well. So if you can just give me 1 second, I will set up my screen to share my slides. Never done this on WebEx before, so I hope this works properly. Okay. Let's see. You should now see a slide that says an initial look. Is that what we see?
Yes, it is.
All right. Wonderful. So some of you may be familiar with learning loss as we have been measuring it at the state. Last March, we released a large statewide report capturing learning loss at the state level and then further breaking it down by just about any subgroup you can imagine, including American Indian students. That was in March of 2011. Very recently, in fact, just a few weeks ago, we also received new data that will allow us to measure what we are terming recovery. So at this point, we are saying learning loss is the phenomenon that occurred more so during the heat of the pandemic in the 2020-2021 school year, and recovery is what we are terming as the rebound that we are seeing, which I'll show you some glances at that here in a second. We are terming that as recovery, that being that kind of bounce back that we see occurring in the 2022 school year, that being the previous school year. We're currently in 2023. So this, as I said, is just going to be an initial look. You can kind of see a lot of slides over here to the left. I'm going to show you maybe about 4 or 5 that, again, just hit the highlights. But if there's time available and interest, I'll go into some deeper specifics as well. Here are a few of the summary results just in writing that I'll be speaking through using my slides. Number 1, American Indian, I'm abbreviating AI throughout the slides. American Indian students experienced learning loss during the 2020-2021 school year with greater average losses in math and science than in ELA. And on average, American Indian students experience more loss than other students around the state. And I'll talk in a second how we define loss and so forth.
Excuse me, this is Dorothy Yates. Will you be able to share these slides with us, or do we need to take notes from them?
At this point, the data that that's a great question. The data that these slides stem from is not available. So I am not able to share these slides until that data becomes available, which should be sometime near the end of the month.
Okay.
Yes. So I would encourage you to take notes, jot down any questions or anything you find especially important. So bullet number 2, at the subject level, that is to say, maybe grade 4 math or English grade 5, American Indian performance at least partially recovered during the 2020-21, 2020-22 school year. Recovery was larger in math and science than in ELA. So if you look at those first 2 bullets, you can see that, well, there were great losses in math and science, but that's also where we saw the largest recovery, the largest rebound. On average, American Indian students have experienced greater recovery than other students around the state. So even though we saw more loss on average, among American Indian students as compared to their statewide peers. We're also seeing greater recovery among American Indian students than among their statewide peers. However, despite this progress, many American Indian students are still performing at levels lower than expected in the absence of the pandemic. That last part of that bullet is especially key to this analysis, and I'm going to kind of walk through exactly what that means here in a second, at levels lower than expected in the absence of the pandemic. And then finally, the last bullet, loss and recovery vary by test or grade level. So that is to say that, even though you can see at the top of the slide, American Indian students experience more loss than other students around the state, well, that's just on average. That loss might vary by subject. So maybe more loss in math grade 5 than in grade 6 and so forth. And you'll see that in the slides. Just as a note there, loss and recovery also vary by many other characteristics, even within American Indians as a student group, for example. You can see that there are differences according to economic status and so forth. All of that information will be coming out in the state level report, which again, we are hoping to have that up in about a month. So today I'm just going to hit the highlights there. Any quick questions on just the summary results to make sure we understand that before I start walking you through the graphs to illustrate these points? All right. So here is how we go about measuring learning loss and recovery at the state level using the data that we have. This is actually something that NCDPI has been doing every year for a long time now. It's nothing new, but we're using it in a new way in order to communicate loss and recovery in the post-pandemic world. Each year we measure student progress as part of our educator evaluation system. You may be familiar with value-added modeling and so forth. This is very similar to that. Essentially, this begins with an expected score. In other words, we are able to, for each student, say we expect that, for example, Kalen might make a 140 on this test, maybe his math grade 8 test. That expected score is generated basically by looking at all of the other scores I've ever had in my testing history. So if I'm in math grade 8, they would predict my math grade 8 score based on all of my standardized test scores that I've taken in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And maybe there's a little bit of early education data in there, such as maybe the M-Class or the iReady, things you might be familiar with. So once that expected score is created, I then take the test and receive an actual score. Over here on the right-hand side, you can kind of see me working this out as an example. So let's say I was expected to score that 140. I score a 148, or excuse me, I score a 138. Well, the formula here is quite simple. We just take the difference between those two, and we call that progress or student growth. 138 minus 140 is -2. Well, in this case, my value is less than 0. It is negative, meaning that I fell short of my expected score. If it were positive, that would mean I exceeded my expected score. So you can see that values that fall to the left of 0 or that are negative indicate falling short of expectations. Values that are greater than 0 indicate exceeding expectations. And essentially all we do to then communicate it through these graphs and reports that we issue is we rescale them into a standardized unit that we can compare across tests, across time, in order to say, well, this is a small gain, or this is a moderate loss, or even this is a large loss. And I'll be talking about some of those benchmarks here in a second. But I just wanted to put the basic idea out there so that those in the room understand how this data is calculated. Any just quick questions there? If not, I'll just go through the kind of the high point slides I've got, pause for questions, and see where we can go from there. All right. I will now share a couple slides, but I want to first show you an example slide so that when you see the more meaty and robust graphs, you'll be more comfortable interpreting those. So here's an example of a slide this is real data, but I'm just using it to help orient you to how to interpret the graphs that I'm going to show you in a second that tell the story of learning loss and recovery. You'll notice that this is a horizontal bar graph. You got bars going to the left, bars going to the right. Down the vertical axis, it's organized by subject, whether ELA, math, or science. And within that, it's organized by year. In this case, we're only showing 2 years, 2018 and 2021. And again, that's to kind of simplify this so that when we look at the ones that are more complex that I'll be showing you that are also coming out in the state report, you'll be more immediately able to interpret them and therefore put it into practice. So you'll notice there's a solid vertical line at 0. Recall that if students score lower than their expected score, their score is negative. So those are the bars going to the left. A bar that moves to the left indicates that the average score for that subject in that year was below 0, meaning that the average student did not meet their expected score. So for example, in ELA 2018, you can see the average student was at negative 0.02. However, ELA 2021, the average student is at negative 0.2. In other words, they're 10 times lower than they were in 2018, and we would say this indicates, a pretty dramatic loss. Looking closer at the graph, you should be able to see some dashed lines over here. So we have one here that goes straight up from there. That is 0.05, negative 0.05, which we're going to use as a benchmark. This is negative 0.2, which we're going to use as another benchmark. Over here, you can see positive 0.05 and positive 0.2. I've superimposed those lines on the graph because at DPI, we've dug into some literature. We see that we've got these values 0.02, 0.2, 0.03, and so forth. But how can we communicate them in just a simple kind of coarse ways so that people know the magnitude of what they're looking at? Because, 0.02 looks small, but is it really small, or is that something that we should be concerned about? So, again, at negative 0.05, negative 0.2, anything between 0 and the first line, negative 0.5, we would consider that to be a small loss based on our literature. Between 0.05 and negative 0.2 in this area here, we would call that a moderate or a medium loss. And then over on the left, anything over here to the left of negative 0.02, if the bar extends past that, we would say that is a large loss. So just a few examples. This one here, we would categorize as a small loss, given that it is negative, and between 0 and negative 0.05. However, this one here, Math 2021, we would categorize that as a large loss, a quite large loss, given that it is negative and very far to the left of negative 0.2. On the flip side of that, you can see this positive 0.1. Well, it's between 0.05 and 0.2. We would say that was students did moderately better than expected in science in grade 2018. So that's kind of a lot to digest, but this is the way that we have found to be most effective to communicate the magnitude of loss and moving forward recovery. I'd like to pause here and see if there are any questions just to clarify just the basic interpretation of these graphs before I quickly walk you through about 3 more that will show you the real values for loss and recovery for ELA, math, and science across the state. All right. There are no questions there. I will continue on, again, hitting the highlights. If there are more specific questions, I'll be sure to address them as they arise. And just come off mute if you want. That's fine with me. So the next graph that you're going to see is going to have a good bit of information on it. It's going to present overall loss and recovery for ELA, math, and science using the entire state. You're going to see some bars representing the performance of American Indian students and some bars representing the performance of everyone else. So everyone who is not identified as an American Indian student. And I'm going to make full screen here to make sure we can see as clear as possible. Okay. All right. So this is basically the entire story in a graph. This is definitely something you might want to kind of take note on. I will just briefly go through this and then switch to another version of essentially the same graph that allows you to focus more explicitly on recovery. So at the bottom are our values, our performance values. You can see again, I've got those kind of benchmark lines, 0.05 and 0.2 built in, keeping in mind this area here represents small. In between 0.05 and 0.2 is moderate or medium. Beyond 0.2 is large. If it's on the left, it's loss. If it's on the right, it is recovery. On the y-axis, we've got our subjects. This time you see 3 years, 2018, 2021, and 2022, going through the years in order. 2018, we kind of put that out there just as like a snapshot of a standard year in North Carolinian education, kind of the general area in which students fell during that year. So you can kind of see, if you were just to look at 2018 values, that they're pretty close to zero. You got a 0, negative 0.02, 0.02, negative 0.03, and so forth down here, meaning that essentially on average, students were doing about as well as we expected them to. And in science, you can actually see in 2018, both American Indian students and non-American Indian students were actually exceeding expectations by a small to moderate margin. The values for 2021, those are the values that we take to represent loss at the state level, given that, that's the heat of the pandemic right there at the end of 2021. And those values we take to represent the sum of everything that happened between school closure in 2022 and spring testing in 2021. In 2022, those values, even though they're still negative, they allow us to observe recovery. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second with another slide that more explicitly visualizes it. So just to kind of tell the story here, you can recall back to that first slide. If you look at the purple bars for 2021, those are the bars that represent the magnitude of loss among American Indian students in each subject. The blue bars, again, are just a simple comparison group, other students around the state. So for example, in ELA in 2021, you can see that American Indian students that's technically 0.2 standard deviations below their expected score. That's right at the threshold of what we would consider to be a large loss, while other students statewide didn't fall quite as far below where we expected them to at negative 0.15. In math, you can see that difference is even larger, that difference between American Indian students and all other students, American Indian students falling at half a standard deviation, which is beyond twice as negative as what it would have to be considered large. In other words, this is a very large loss, American Indian students in math, and the difference there is quite substantial between American Indian students and all other statewide students. Science in 2021, the same basic picture there, American Indians experiencing a quite large loss, statewide students also experiencing a quite large loss, but not quite so much. Now, I mentioned that the 2022 bars can help us view recovery. Well, a good question there is, well, they're still negative. Yes, they are still negative. But if we were to take the difference between 2021 and 2022, that would tell us the degree to which scores have rebounded, the degree to which those scores have moved back towards zero. So very quickly, I'm going to move to that slide. Great. So this is a great simple graph that just summarizes those differences that I was just describing. We at the state level are defining recovery as the difference between the values in 2021 and 2022. And again, even though those values are negative on average in both years, we can take that difference to see how much scores have improved, how closer students are now to their expected score than they were during the pandemic. Purple bars here representing American Indian students, blue bars representing everyone else. You can see that across subjects, this is what I was saying on the first slide, you can see that across subjects, American Indian students are making more or have made more recovery in each subject than other students statewide. So for example, in ELA, the score improved by 0.04. That's, a small, but it's approaching a moderate rebound. However, American Indian students are well into a moderate rebound at positive 0.07. You can see our guidelines here again. In math, all students statewide are making more rebound in math as well as in science. You can see down here. But all students statewide are making rebound in math. American Indian students a little bit more so, having recovered a quarter of a standard deviation, and that's quite large. Keep in mind our rough guidelines we're using to communicate there with those vertical lines. And then again in science, large rebounds across the state, with American Indian students making quite a good bit more rebound in science than other students around the state. You can see American Indian students recovered 0.29, which is a large recovery, again using those guidelines, while other students around the state recovered 0.18. So the previous slide, it had all of this information embedded in it, but what I'm showing you right here is what I would consider to be the highlight. It is the degree to which students have recovered, at least at the grade level, comparing fourth graders now to fourth graders last year. This tells us how much closer they are to where we expect them to be than their counterparts were in the previous school year. I know I just said a lot. This is actually one of the first opportunities I've ever gotten to speak about this data to a live audience. So I want to make sure I'm coming across as clearly as possible. If anybody's got any questions or comments, concerns even, now would be a good time until I kind of wrap up with this last slide I want to show.
This is Dorothy Yates. I have one question. Did you say that the comparison is the fourth grade and then the fourth grade the next year? So it's not the same students.
Now that is an excellent question, and I'm actually going to just quickly speak on that here in a second. However, like say we use this as an example. This slide, let's go back here. Right. So see if I can find a good one. Sorry. All right. So here's math. And we can see, let's focus in on math grade 8 right here. We've got our purple bars for American Indian students, and let's just focus on those. Try to ignore the blue bars for right now just to simplify this. These are students that took math grade 8 in 2021, ended at negative 0.6, a quite large loss. Then in 2022, you can see that students who in math grade 8, they were closer to their expected score. So yes, technically what we're looking at here are observing grade levels and seeing how much closer each successive cohort of students is to their expected score than the previous cohort before them. So yes, definitely looking at these slides, we're not talking specifically about an individual student, because if I take math grade 7 in 2021, I'm probably taking math grade 8 in 2022. However, I will say that I have worked with the data in such a way that allows me to follow the same student from grade level to grade level. And when you take that approach, what you see is that, well, Kalen, he took, I think I've got this on the slide. One second. Yes, right here in this middle bullet. This is exactly, kind of ironically, it's a frequently asked question. These graphs track subjects and grades between years. Are individual students recovering as they move to higher grades? The answer to that is yes. We can track progress within students over time to see that, for example, a student who was at negative 0.3 in math grade 5 during 2021 was at negative 0.15 in math grade 6 during 2022. Now, those numbers in there, that's just an example. But it is true that if you were to look at students over time, you would see that student on average is doing better this year than they did last year. Does that answer the question clearly?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a visual to represent that right now. Like I said, this data is still fairly new to the department and to myself. But yes, it is true that we can also track students, and individual students on average are also experiencing recovery as well. And that kind of teed me up just for my last couple slides. I mentioned these are some questions we get pretty frequently when we're talking about loss and recovery. We don't yet know what might be causing this to happen. I think a lot of people could think about things that they've heard of or that they've experienced that might be supporting recovery around the state. We can't pinpoint anything yet, and a lot of that is just because the data is so new. We've dug in a lot into issues that may have prevented learning loss in 2021, but we haven't yet looked at the flip side of that coin, which is what are things that promote more recovery in 2022. But feel free to reach out to the Office of Learning, Recovery, and Acceleration and let us know if you have an idea, and maybe we can test it in the data. And then at the bottom, another question, I alluded to this on my first slide, was, does this vary by this or even this, race and gender and locale and PSU, and whether a student is economically disadvantaged or any of these other student characteristics? And the answer to that is generally yes. Loss and both recovery, they vary in significant and substantial ways by a lot of characteristics. For example, if I were to have shown you a comparison of loss and recovery for American Indian students, but split that into economically disadvantaged American Indian students and non-economically disadvantaged American Indian students, you would have been able to see a big difference between those student groups as well. More information on just variation in this, more intricate ways of cutting the data up, those will also be coming out in the state level report. But for my final slide, I want to kind of leave us on a little bit. I think recovery is great. We see that the values are still negative. That means we've still got a good ways to go, but we've made great recovery, especially in the areas of math and science. ELA, I think we can step our work up a little bit. However, that's just the average. So on this slide, what I'm going to leave you with is an understanding that there are many students out there who are actually still on track, so to speak. They are currently doing at least as well as we would have expected them to in the absence of the pandemic. And again, the way we measure that is by looking at the difference between how they actually scored on the test and how we expected them to score on the test. So this graph here for American Indian students only shows you the percent of students who are at least meeting their expected score. People or students who have done at least as well as we expect them to. You can see that with the purple bar representing 2021, the percent of students who are doing as well as we have expected to based on their prior testing history took a dip in all subjects during 2021, especially in math and science. But you can see that in all subjects, the percent of students who are now doing at least as well as we would have expected them to is moving back up. You can see that it has more than doubled in math and science. 22% of students doing as well as we would have expected them to in 2021. It's now up to 48%. Almost half of students are now seemingly back on track. And then in science, you can see that boost is even more dramatic. So one question here, when we think about how this varies around the state, is, well, where are these students that are seemingly on track? Like they appear to be doing as well as we would have expected them to, even if the pandemic wouldn't have occurred. So that is something my office is also looking into, is trying to find these bright spots, because when we dig into those bright spots, we believe that we can find promising practices to disseminate throughout the state. So just in sum, yes, there was large, substantial loss across all subjects and all tested areas for American Indian students. However, there have also been great gains, great recovery, keeping in mind that students, the average student at least, is still somewhat further behind than we would have predicted them to be in the absence of the pandemic. At this point, just a quick note on how you can access this data, how people in your partner PSUs, or even if you yourself work in a PSU, these details I can send you in an email, or I'll drop them in the chat before I leave. But essentially what this says, and this timeline is actually pretty tight given that today is the 3rd, we partner with SAS, which is an analytics firm, and Carey to generate the data that underlies the analysis and the graphs that I just showed you. Essentially, what needs to happen is someone from the PSU, either the superintendent, you can see in the first sub-bullet here, either the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, needs to contact SAS and say, we want the data for our district because we want to know what's going on with our students. Because, all we have right now is just information at the state. Well, the state is not all PSUs are carbon copies of the state. So districts need to just reach out to SAS, has to be the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, and then SAS will create kind of the secure file sharing folder. They'll give you a password and a username. You log in and you can just pull it out, and there it is. Again, the timeline on this, it appears pretty tight, but I would expect them to be pretty flexible with this, especially since I'm now beginning to kind of present this data throughout the state. And I expect, them to get a lot of interest and a lot of requests for these reports. And then, if, according to this timeline, if they would have requested it by the end of the day today, they would have gotten it by early next week. But again, I believe they would be flexible moving forward. I don't expect them to say anything like, oh, too late, we're not going to send it to you. The fact of the matter is, the data belongs to the districts. They need the data in order to do the things that they need to do for their students. So I'm sure that SAS would work with you there. But this time, I'm just going to open it up for any comments, questions, or concerns. I greatly appreciate your time. Again, this was my first experience getting to present this recovery data to an audience. So I greatly appreciate that and honored to be a guest here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clifton. I do have one question. I wanted to just be really intentional about it. So you did show that data that our American Indian students were showing a greater rate of performance with that learning loss and recovery. But each and every year that SACE report comes out, our American Indian students continue to lag behind their white counterparts. And so you kind of mentioned about instructional practices. So I do want to ensure that you're sharing this data within the North Carolina Public of Instruction, Department of Public Instruction, and working together to implement instructional strategies that are best for American Indian students so that we can see that SACE report data being moved. So are there intentions for those conversations to happen so that those best practices can be implemented?
Yes, I would say that is definitely the intent. We are kind of internally already having a lot of those conversations. For example, later on today, I'm going to speak with another group at DPI who is specifically interested in a different subgroup of students, basically kind of walking them through the same thing I just walked you all through to try to get the ball rolling, so to speak. When it comes to, I think the spirit of the comment, the question there was, trying to improve practice for students to increase equity within the system. That is always definitely the goal. I'm willing to, work with any group within DPI, and that's what I've been doing for about the last 15 months since I joined the department to help them look at this data and start to identify ways that they can make meaningful improvements to the practices of either the schools that they support or the students that they support, the student subgroups that they support. But my role is largely, or has traditionally largely been, to communicate the data, get it out there, encourage people to come back if they have further questions. I encourage everyone in this room to reach out to OLR with further questions. We can do more analysis and hopefully dig into the things that will help us meet our shared goals. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat. If I can, here it is. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. This webpage contains materials relating to the report we put out last March that is specifically just about learning loss. You'll see in there similar bar graphs. They won't include 2022 information because that's the data we just received that we're using to measure recovery. But a similar version of that report that's going to contain a lot of information similar to what I just shared, including further breakdowns of American Indian data for loss and recovery. All of that will be in that report, which again, we anticipate being publicly available within about a month.
Okay, I think Mr. Calvin Locklear has a question as well. He has his, Calvin, you have a question? Miss Dorothy Yates has her hand raised. Miss Yates.
Yes, my question is, for those of us who are concerned about our Title VI Indian education students, we would need to go to the superintendent of our school districts and specifically ask for this report for loss and recovery for our American Indian students within our school district. Is that the procedure that we would take?
So I just dropped, there was that one slide I shared with like how you should be able to gain access to the report. Essentially, yes, so at one point a couple of weeks ago, there was an email that went out essentially letting all superintendents know that this information was available specifically for their district. So it has to be either the superintendent or the superintendent's official designee, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure what that means, but I assume that maybe it's like a chief of staff or someone like that. Those people have to contact SAS directly to receive these materials. I have an email address somewhere I just thought of that I can also drop in the chat, and that would be the email address that you would need to message, or that the superintendent or that the superintendent's designee would need to message in order to get these reports. And what SAS would then send the district would be a very large PDF file, and it's going to contain much more information in it than just about American Indian students, but a lot of American Indian information would also be in there as well. Let me see if I can find that email address. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
However, I did not get the information that was put in the chat. Did you get that, Dr. Locklear, that you could send to us?
Yes, ma'am. I have it, and I can send it. I can resend it to everyone. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalen, and we'll wait for you to send that other information in the chat. Thank you for joining us. At this time, we will do a 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene for the rest of our agenda.
Hello?
Hello.
Thank you. I will go back on mute.
At this time, we will reconvene. If everyone would just type in the chat that they're here, that would be great. And then we can get started with our next agenda item. Okay, great. Looks like we have a quorum, so we can proceed with our next agenda item. Next on our agenda, we do have our work session for our 2023 SACE report draft review. So we will look at our theme, our recommendations, our state level data review, our Title VI district profiles and data, and then our appendices, which includes our mascot update and our Title VI coordinators.
Okay. If you'd like, Dr. Lockley, I'm happy to take it and kind of walk us through these.
Yes, please. Thank you.
First, absolutely. So first, thank you. I do want to recognize one person, a new person that's on our call, and that is Ms. Hawana Locklear. She is a member of the Lumbee tribe, and she works in our federal programs division, and they recently reached out, and she would like to take part in SACE meetings, so we look forward to her joining the work. So just wanted to recognize her before we went any further. So what you have in the link in the agenda is the draft report. Just as a reminder, you all voted on in December, you voted on the theme and the recommendation. You also saw a preview of the data from someone from Accountability Division, Mr. Curtis Sonneman. So all of this is data you've already received. So what you're seeing today is it in a completed package. It's going through a QA process now. So just wanted to give you an overview of the pieces so that you can just vote on the entirety of the report. But again, you've already voted on varying pieces of these. So there you see your theme, Elevating Our Voices to Thrive in Education. You can go to page 5. Then that's just basic standard content. Then on page 5 here, you see your letter from Chairwoman Locklear, which she prepared and raises up the theme and focuses on some key initiatives that go along with the recommendation. So if you go to page 7. So on page 7, you see first at the top, this is the composite state level data, and go back out a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. You see the composite state level data, which shows you the comparison between white students and American Indian students and the percentage difference. And then under that, you will see your recommendation. And the recommendation is a carryover from the one last year with advocacy around the American Indian director position, which is what you all voted on in your last meeting to make your focus going forward so that you could really tighten up the advocacy around it. Okay. Page 12, Kelly. And what you see there's stock information explaining what the terms mean. So the next set of data you see are the state findings broken out by the grade levels, elementary and secondary, and for reading and math. So you see that broken out. You will see there is a 2-year trend represented there, as in previous years, 19 and 20, not there because that was COVID year when schools did not test. You see the narrative for each of those. So you'll see that for 3 through 8 for reading and math and science. Page 12 should be our next one, Kelly. Then you see, that's science. Keep going. And you'll see also 6 through 8, EOG math and reading. Again, you'll see the data charts there and then the narrative underneath those. Go ahead, Kelly. Science, as I referenced earlier. Your high school tests, which are your biology and English. Math 1. And there's a narrative for each of those, which again, this is data that you saw presented by Curtis Sonneman when he came in December. I'll pause here. The 4-year cohort graduation rate. That data is represented there as well. And then we have data on advanced placement courses, SAT and ACT. And that's all state level. And again, I'll remind that when we say American Indian students, those are students that identify as American Indian when they are in Power School or when they take their assessment and ask for that demographic information. If a student identifies as 2 races or more, they are not identified within this American Indian subgroup. You can scroll down. So sometimes it's not necessarily capturing all your students that are in Title VI, for example. Okay, you can scroll down. In the next section are the findings for each individual LEA. So each LEA that has a Title VI program, they are represented there with their data. And Kelly, let's just pause on one. You can go back up to Clinton City there. Or just, it doesn't matter which one. And what you'll note here is that you see the data again broken out by grade level for that particular district, and you see a narrative about it. We did add Sampson County and Clinton City this year. They had not been represented, and Richmond County no longer has a Title VI, so they were taken out. So that's just what each of the program pages looks like, and you'll see the contact person with whatever the district has given us. Sometimes it's the director, and sometimes it is the Title VI program coordinator. Where possible, we try to list both. Okay. Next, so if you go all the way down to page 71. Okay, so those pages right up to that are all of those district profiles because each district has quite a few there. And then you see the district breakout also for SAT, ACT, et cetera. In Appendix A, I'm just going to go through some of the appendices so that you know what's in there. So if you get a question about why it's there, you know why. So Appendix A will have the 2021 safety report recommendations. And the reason why they remain there is because all current recommendations since then refer to getting this position so that they can enact previous recommendations. So what has been decided is that the previous recommendations will be placed into the report so that they can be referred to. If you could scroll down. Page 72. Yep. Just going to pause here. This is still the information from the pilot that SAFC members participated in 2020, 2021. And we keep that there because that drew out the need for the American Indian position as those priorities. So that's just a standing page right now to kind of be an advocate for the position and what the needs are as identified for something outside of just the council, but by this pilot that was done by the National Center for American Indian Alaska Native for that Circles of Reflection project. Okay. Then what you've seen in the standing appendices is some information about historical things about American. These have been standing for years. You'll see the 506 form. The next time I'm going to update you on is on page 81. All right, so then we have an update on our mascot. On this page, you just see the raw numbers, and what we do is we go to each one of the schools that still had a mascot. We go and check to see if that's still in play. And Kelly, if you could go back to the agenda, this is what we print in the actual book, but then I have a internal document that we use where you can see what the mascots are. So I just wanted to share that, and I'll just show a few. You could scroll down. So that you know the nature of what the mascots are, I would try and do a screenshot so you could see what types of mascots are still out there. You'll see varying things. You can scroll down, Kelly, just so they can see some of those. Warriors are very popular. You'll see the Indian logo there. Lots of Braves and things of that nature. In some schools, and you can view this as progress or maybe an attempt to downplay it. So I'll pause here on the St. Stephen's High School. A lot of them will have on their main page just the logo of their school initials, like I might say S or WC, but then if you go to the athletics page and you see the athletic gear, that's when you'll see the more demonstrative American Indian logos. So it's either an attempt to phase out or to do better, or it's an attempt to hide that the mascot is there. I'm not sure which one it is. I couldn't speak to the motivations behind that. But I have noticed that on several ones, that on the main page, you might not see the logo, but if you dig in a little bit, you would find that there. So that's there for your viewing as you would like. We don't include this in the report. We just include the numbers there. Okay. You can go back to the report, Kelly. So those are the highlights from the report for you all to vote on today. Dr. Locklear, I will turn it back over to you for any specifics. Again, you've already voted on the theme and the recommendation and have previously viewed this data, but certainly is there for you to dig in deeper as you would like. And we can give you about a window until about a 5-day window to provide any revisions that you would like before we finalize it. We'll go to the state board in April, so I have to have the final report prepared by the second week of March.
Thank you. Does anyone from the committee have any questions as it relates to the SACE report draft?
Dr. Silva, this is Rodney Jackson. Can you repeat what you said about the multi-race students?
Yeah, so multiracial students, so you can classify your American Indian, you can pick your race. You cannot be, if you identify as multiracial, then that's the subgroup you are placed in. So if you're an American Indian, but don't mark American Indian, instead mark multiracial, you don't necessarily show up in this data. You have to mark American Indian to show up in this data.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time?
Dr. Locklear, this is Dorothy Yates. My question isn't about the report, but I, along with Rodney, on that clarification, that is excluding a lot of our Indian students in this report. So what action can we take as the State Advisory Council? Is it, I don't know what the specific choices are. This is the choices that they make in PowerSchool that this data is pulled according to. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does anyone know what the race choices are in PowerSchool right off the top of your head?
Actually, I'm pulling it up right now. I've got access to PowerSchool in my district. And this is Angelique Young, by the way. Let me pull that up real quickly. Okay, the way it is separated, it's by Hispanic or not Hispanic. And so I guess that presents another question for those students who identify as Hispanic. Is AI also in the report? So it has American Indian, Asian, Black, or African, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, and white. So those are the choices. So I suppose from what I'm understanding, if a parent clicks 2 races, that will automatically put them in a multi-race subgroup. Is that what I'm understanding?
So So I can't speak to exactly how it works in Power School level, but the state reports various subgroups. So the state subgroups are Black, white, Hispanic, multiracial, or two or more races, and then economically disadvantaged groups. What I can say is that if a parent doesn't mark American Indian, their student is not going to show up in this data.
Okay. Thank you.
If they mark American Indian, they're showing up.
Okay.
Did you read those choices again, Angelique?
Yes, the choices that are in Power School are American Indian, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, and white. But the ethnicity is Hispanic or not Hispanic.
So if they choose two races, they're not included in our report.
There is a subgroup identified by the state that's two or more races that wouldn't show up in this data. And we can get someone from accountability to come in and talk about the subgroups. And Consuela just clarified, if they choose two, they are automatically placed in the two or more races category because they can't count them twice. So if the student marks white and American Indian, they can't split them out and count them twice, as we just said. So they put them in the two or more races category.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Silver, this is Rhea. So just to make sure I'm clear, this comes from enrollment, like when the parent enrolls the child for their very first time at school, right?
Yes, so it used to be when we used to take it, like every time before we took, I took CAT test, but we would have to fill it out ourselves and identify, but yes, now they pull it from Power School. And Consuela also just clarified, if they choose American Indian and Hispanic, they're removed from the American Indian count. And and not to complicate things further, but the other distinction to make is that, remember for Title VI, an American Indian student can use their grandparents' travel card or go off what their grandparents identify as. So you might have students that don't identify, in their birth certificate or maybe even Power School as AI, but they're still part of those services or part of that count. This just goes by what the state pulls through Power School.
And does the state not require any identification? It's just self-identified.
Correct.
If we don't have any other questions at this time. So, Dr. Silver, we do still have time that everyone can continue to look at this report. So we still have 5 days to provide feedback as it relates to profiles and data.
We can give everybody a timeline until March 8th to give us any feedback specifically regarding specific revisions, not Well, we could certainly answer questions, but specific revisions. That's when we'll be entering our final revisions to our graphics department.
Okay. We do have it on our agenda as an action item. It was sent out earlier in the week for folks to review. I did review the report prior to our meeting. So it is on the floor as an action item today.
Yeah, and how you could approve it today would be approving it regarding any minor revisions that need to be made.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need the motion now?
Yes, if we could get a motion on the floor, that would be great.
This is Dorothy Yates. I make the motion that we approve the report as presented and reviewed, leaving open minor revisions that may need to be made by March the 8th.
This is Tina Lance, and I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. Thank you, guys. That is so excited to have this report approved so early. It's March and that report's approved. Thank you all for your great work and dedication to getting this done. Thank you to our DPI team for all your hard work and dedication to that SACE report. We certainly appreciate you guys. And this time, on our agenda, we have the 2023 SACE Summit debrief. So I would like to open the floor for all of us as a committee to debrief and provide feedback as it relates to the summit. I heard a lot of feedback about the summit. I would like to hear from you guys. What worked, what didn't work, what would you like to see next time? That event is held every other year. So I would just like to, we would like to hear your voice today.
This is Dorothy Yates. It was so good to get the update on our own Title VI programs, to have for an example of some of the excellent things that are happening for our American Indian students. So I appreciate the Cumberland County and the Guilford Native Association for giving their specific reports.
This is Angelique Young. From the feedback that I received from the Kahari tribe as well as Clinton City Schools and Sampson County Schools, they were really impressed. They thought the summit was professionally done. The workshops were timely. They were relevant to what is going on, whether it be the tribe or the school systems at the time. They thought it was just a well-run event, organized and seamless. So hats off to those of you who worked behind the scenes. They really didn't have anything negative to say at all about it. And because of Stephen Bell's presentation with including the 506 form as a digital form in the enrollment process, Clinton City Schools is actually adopting that. So beginning the school year 2023-24, as they enroll kindergarten students, that 506 form is going to automatically pop up when families click AIAN for their child to enroll. So that is a positive thing that's come out of the SACE Summit that Clinton City Schools is implementing almost right away.
Thank you guys for your feedback. I do think that the summit allowed us to get some traction on that position as well. So that was helpful for us as it relates to the summit. So that was a good thing for us. Any others want to share insights? Okay, at this time, I do not have any announcements at this time. So if we could get a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, if I could really quickly before we open the floor, I just wanted to announce to everyone, I sent an email that came from the curriculum division about that science survey about the standards. Please continue to distribute that to your communities. DPI has been much more intentional about when things like that come about, sending it to me so we can get it out to our communities. So they certainly make our voices known. And thank you to everyone who replied back that they had already forwarded it or they had already done it. Also, I know our Title VI folks are listening. So, some of them are on the YouTube channel. So just want to thank everyone who sent pictures in. We tried to put in as many as we could to make sure we had some representation. And some we'll keep on file so that we can have them as a bank. So we have some bank for years when we don't get as many. So just wanted to express my thanks for that. And last thing, thanks to all of you for helping with the summit and all of your work you did, and for everyone who donated gifts. That was so thoughtful and so helpful, and I thought really helped show appreciation for the guests. And also thank you to Alina for being our photographer. So just wanted to share those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one more. And thank you to the Cumberland County children who came and did the drumming for us.
Not Locklear, is Rodney Jackson.
Please proceed.
I want to just remind everyone that we will be having our second annual Eagle Feather ceremony on May the 4th. We are limited. This year, we actually have 90, as of yesterday, we have 98 American Indian seniors graduating from Cumberland County schools, and we're representing 14 different tribes from across the nation. So we are limited on our seats that we can actually invite people. So we are going to stream it live on YouTube, and I will send that link out to everyone later on. And I hope you'll be able to watch the ceremony with us.
Yes, please share. Thank you.
Dr. Locklear, this is Calvin Locklear.
Please proceed.
So I had a few different things. So please bear with me. I have been just collecting a bunch of different information here, and I wanted to get it out to everyone so that you are all aware of it. So I'm pretty sure everyone here is familiar with Ashley Lomboy, who she presented at our SAC Summit, and she did a very good job. She's been doing a very good job with her STEM Studio program down there in the Buckhead area. I don't know if you are aware of this, but Ashley's sons are enrolled in a charter school in the Wilmington area, and she has been recently. She's never cut their hair. She's always kept it in a bun because the school she goes to, they don't let them wear their hair down. So she's always put it in a bun. But recently she was told that they are going to have to cut their hair. So I was moved to bring that to this board's attention. I thought that was something that we should. I don't know if we should actually address it, as a body, but I just wanted to put it out there so that you guys are aware of it. I'm sure Rhea knows about it, and some other people that are probably part of this board, but it was something I thought that we should definitely be aware of. The other, and some other announcements I wanted to make. So ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, which I am the president of, the chapter has started. We've been granted a charter by the ACES National Conference. So if you guys, if you're interested in joining ACES, or if you know of someone who would be interested in joining ACES, tell them to reach out to me. My email, locklear@redhat.com. There's the UNC powwow, which is this weekend. Chapel Hills powwow is this weekend, so we're sending some folks. So if you guys are going to be around for that, I'm looking forward to seeing some of you at the Unity Conference next week. And also there is Robinson Community College will be hosting the Region 7 ACES conference on April 21st and 22nd. So if you're in Robinson County, or really anywhere, and you're interested in see what ACES is about, that Region 7 conference will be taking place on those two dates down at Robinson Community College. I posted it on my Facebook, so if you guys are friends with me on Facebook, or you can go to Facebook and check that out. And that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments about any of that stuff I just talked about? Thank you, Dr. Locklear.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements at this time? Thank you guys for sharing those announcements.
This is Dorothy Yates again. I look forward to seeing you at the Unity Conference and attending our Stacy session.
Thank you, Miss Dorothy. I look forward to seeing everyone as well next week at the Unity Conference. If there are no other announcements at this time, can we get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn. This is Calvin Locklear.
I second, LaRonda Lowry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.